Welcome to another episode of the Every Arkansan Podcast. I'm Drew Davis, and this week we've got Matt Mosler sharing his story of bringing hope back to Pine Bluff. Well, Matt Mosler, so thankful you joined us today. Put you on the other end of the spectrum. You don't get to ask me questions. I get to ask you questions.
It's a much scarier place to be on this side of the interview. Yeah. It's easy when I got my questions ready to go and I can just react to that. But answering them, I'm always afraid of. One of our family mottos is "Don't embarrass the family," and we created that because of me.
Was it more your daughters created that, or your son?
Yeah, no, it was my daughters.
Oh, so we're all about encouraging people how they can chase their God-given dream, and just knowing you for years and remembering I had Matt Mosler TV in my phone for you for a long time, seeing that kind of transition. But where did it all start?
I got started in television in 1987 after I graduated from the University of Alabama, and started working at the CBS affiliate in Tuscaloosa. And when people know that you're a Christian, because I used to sing with gospel groups and things like that, and people knew that you're a Christian and you're on television, we have one of ours in that evil media. So let's invite them to our church to speak to our youth, to speak to our seniors, that sort of thing. So as soon as I started working in 87, I would get invitations to go to churches and stuff. And it was a good gig. And so I did that for a couple of years in Tuscaloosa, went to Jackson, Mississippi, hosted a morning show, did the weather, and started singing with a gospel quartet, and would just going to churches all the time. And then to Austin, Texas, doing the same thing. But when I came to Little Rock, it really ramped up to the point where at one point I'm speaking 150 times a year all over the country. And I'm going from California to DC. I'm doing men's retreats and revivals. And just because you were in television and you had this message to share. So I always use the celebrity that came along with television to share my faith. I remember when God was talking to Moses and he was wanting him to go back to speak to Pharaoh, one of the things that Moses, he said, how am I going to do what you want me to do? I don't even know who you are. I don't think I'm ready. And how are they going to believe that you're the one who sent me? And God said, what's that in your hand? And he said, well, it's a staff, because he was a shepherd. He was a goat herder. God said, throw it on the ground. He throws it on the ground, turns into a snake, right? You saw the movie. And then he says, all right, pick it up by the tail, picks it up, turns back into a staff again. Well, God used that staff to part the Red Sea, to get water out of a rock, to keep, Moses held the staff high. The armies of Israel were mighty in battle. Well, that staff was just an element of his profession. He was a shepherd. He used that staff to keep his sheep and his goats in line. God was able to use an element of his profession to bring glory to himself. And so it was always, what element of my profession can I be using to bring God glory? Because my job as a meteorologist was not to get on television and say, the God who created the heavens and the earth and separated the waters of the earth and the waters of the ground, he's going to open up the waters of the sky and it's going to rain 4 inches today. You couldn't proselytize on the air, but you could use the celebrity that came along with television to get into those churches and those schools and those civic groups and do a talk, but then also share your faith. And it got to the point where I was doing that a lot more than I was doing the TV. And I'll never forget, I was in the choir loft of my church in North Little Rock in the fall of 2000, and I heard God tell me in a very high tenor voice, that I want you out of television and into full-time ministry. I was like, no, I'm speaking 150 times a year. I'm doing television. We finally have enough money in our savings account. We're thinking about college. You want me to leave the only profession I've ever known, the only job I've trained for, the only thing I really know how to do, and you want me to go into what kind of ministry? How am I going to make a living? How is this going to work? And I get in the car and I really wanted to go. My heart was I wanted to go. I was just too afraid to take the step out of the boat. And I get in the car and we're driving home. I got tears coming down my face. I said, maybe I think God wants me out of television to go to full-time ministry. And my wife's sitting over here in the passenger seat and she's got tears coming down her face and she says, no, he's not. But because it was this scary step of faith. I'm going to leave the only thing I know how to do and I'm going to learn to trust you in faith. What is faith? I grew up in a lot of different denominations, and faith was always an acronym for a fundraising program. We didn't really talk about faith, yet God wanted, and so we went in this journey to really understand what faith was. And when I left television and went into full-time ministry in 2001, I thought I was like, God, aren't you glad I'm on your team? And within a year and a half, I failed miserably. I was flat broke. And so, but it was at that point, and I'll never forget, it was like June of 2003 or something like that. And I paid my bills, and I had, before I left television, I had probably 25,000 in the bank. We didn't have a savings account until we came to Little Rock. People think you make a lot of money in television, but there's only one Oprah. She's making it all. And the rest of us are just, we're scrambling. But I was working at the ABC affiliate here, and we had, pretty good amount of money in the bank. And then I leave television, go into ministry. Within a year and a half, it's gone, because I was doing ministry my way. And so I'll never, June 2003, somewhere around there, I wrote this. I paid all my bills on the June 15th, and I was going to leave on this. I was going to Chattanooga, Columbia, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., and I was going to come back with all this love offering, and I was going to pay my bills, which are July 1st. And I do this thing, and I come back, and I unload my pockets. I got half as much money as I need to pay my bills, which are due tomorrow. And I just got mad at God. I mean, mad. And I pull open this Bible, and I said, you promised me that you would meet my needs according to your riches and glory. You promised me that if I would give, you'd give it back to me, pressed down, shaken together, overflowing. You promised me in this book that if I would tithe, you'd open up the windows of heaven, lead me in green pasture, rivers of living water. I'm throwing all these Bible verses at God in case he forgot. And I said, you promised that you would meet my needs. My bills are due tomorrow. I can't pay my bills, which are due tomorrow. And you promised that you would. Now, if you said you would and you didn't do it, how can I believe anything else that's in this book? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like, God, you better do this for me. It was, are you there? Mm-hmm. Do you even exist? Has this all been just a joke? Is this just, and my whole life has been dedicated to this. I preach this. I thought I believed this. I get down to this point, and now I actually have to trust him that he's going to do what he says he's going to do, and he's not doing it. And I mean, it was this crisis of faith. I feel like I'm teetering on the edge of this mountain where my whole life is hanging in the balance. Who am I? What am I about? What's my purpose? I mean, it's an empty feeling. And I close my Bible and I walk upstairs and I start brushing my teeth, because even if I'm going to hell, I do believe in good dental hygiene. And then I turn around 5 minutes. 5 minutes has maybe elapsed, and I'm walking down the stairs. And my son, who's 11 or 12 at the time, he's walking up the stairs. He meets me halfway, and he hands me an envelope that a man had just dropped off at the front door. It had $5,000 in it. Now, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up in that church, okay? That's never happened to me before. But I opened it up, and I just hit the floor and start crying. And God said, okay, I told you I was going to. But it was this wonderful moment where I accepted Christ when I was 8 years old. But I met him that day, and he became real to me. And it was like, there's a difference between doing God's work and God's will, and you've been trying to do my work your way. How about you let me take over? And because the Bible says God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. And I'm doing all this in my strength. I am so good at what I do. And God said, let me do what I'm asking you to do. And it was from that point that my faith journey really began to the point where we are now.
Yeah, and I mean, you're an outdoor lover, and part of that was Crosshairs, mm-hmm. which is a great place for anyone to visit. And one of the things you had a Ministry Beautiful Feet that we first connected on was you were bringing kids and connecting them with the outdoors. Yeah, kids who otherwise hadn't got that experience. But here you were in Little Rock. How in the world did you end up from here to Pine Bluff? Where was that journey in listening to God?
Wow. Well, how did I end up? Well, when I moved here from Austin, Texas, I came to work for the ABC affiliate KATV, and KATV is started in Pine Bluff. In fact, I don't know if they still do it, but it says KATV Pine Bluff, Little Rock. That was the first television signal came out of Pine Bluff. The first radio signal came out of Pine Bluff, So when I started working there, we did a lot of stuff in South Arkansas, and Pine Bluff was one of those big towns, and then when we started our ministry, because I spent so much time in the Delta, we started doing mission trips to Dermot and Eudora and Lake Village, and we'd go down to Southeast Arkansas because it grabbed a hold of my heart. I saw a group of human beings, people that God had created, that were being robbed of their purpose, and the enemy had a hold on them, and we just wanted to go down and do some good stuff. And that's early, late 90s, early 2000s. And then the faith journey started in 2001 or so, and left television, went to full-time ministry, did these projects, and got Crosshairs in about 2004. And then when I had left Channel 7 in 2001 and started this full-time ministry, Channel 4 called me, the NBC affiliate, to come to work for them in 2006, and I didn't want to go. And I said I'd pray about it. I really don't feel, they asked me, I don't want to go back in television. I'm doing this ministry. We're starting to gain some traction, but I'll pray about it. I know what God's going to say, but I'll ask him anyway. And I happened to be at that time reading through Chronicles. And again, we didn't have any money. So when you don't have any money and you need a vacation, you go wherever your parents are going and you kind of sponge off them. So, but we were down in Mobile, Gulf Shores, and I'm reading through Chronicles, and I just, through these Bible verses, I started reading about this king did right in the sight of the Lord, and God blessed him. This king did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he was forsaken. And that led me to Jesus saying, if you seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, all these things. And I just got the sense that God was telling me, look, for the last several years, you've done everything I've asked you to do, and you're doing it right. And I'm just blessing you. This is a blessing, because I know your kids are wearing, old clothes, and all that money we'd saved was gone. So this is a blessing. And so the Channel 4 thing opened up, and I did Channel 4 for about 8 years, and it opened up a lot of doors in a lot of different ways. But then in 2014, I feel that stirring. And when you hear it for the first time, like I explained before, I didn't want to go. And then when you step out, and like Peter, and that whole story about Peter stepping out of the boat really resonated with me. And when you step out of the boat the first time, you're just really scared. And then you meet God, and Jesus reaches his hand, he picks you up and carries you, and we learn this lesson. And that started this journey. So every time next time God would ask me to do something, we're like, well, and I'd step and follow, and he'd show up. And then it got to the point where, I felt like God was asking me to go to Pine Bluff, and I was like, all right, I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're just going to follow you. And that was, so in 2014, when I left Channel 4 and started with New Life to learn how to be a pastor, because I've just done evangelism. I've never done this pastor thing. These people work too much. But I had a lot to learn. Well, I think New Life had designs on me being a pastor elsewhere. And Camille and I, my wife, we both felt like all these other places they were asking me to go, that wasn't where we needed to be. And so I went to our two pastors at New Life, Rick Bazette and Harry Bates, and I said, if you really want me to pastor, I want to go to Pine Bluff. And they went, really? I'm like, yeah. The Pine Bluff is like ground zero, baby. That's like the front lines of the battle. And it was just this thing God put on my heart to go down there and start this church. And nobody wants to go to Pine Bluff. The thing you learn quickly about Southeast Arkansas is that everything moves northwest. It's not just jobs. It's not just money. It's information. Everything goes northwest, and nothing comes back.
Right.
And so they didn't even know what New Life Church was. Of course, they knew who I was. But they didn't know who New Life Church was. And so when we wanted to go there, New Life, I don't know if that was on their radar. Maybe it was, but they jumped in with both feet. And I love the way that New Life Church plants churches. They don't look at the map and say, we need one here, who are we going to put in there? They wait until God calls somebody and stirs in their heart to say, I want to go to Pine Bluff. And we could not do what we're doing down there without this church behind us. It's been amazing. So it was, compared to my first step of faith in 2001, this was cake, baby. It was easy.
Not that easy. Getting in a house and a few things.
Well, there were
a few bumps in the road.
But even through all that, even through we went through some stuff, getting this house and had some problems. But And it was really stressful. I mean, it really, trying to plant a church, trying to get in a house, trying to start this ministry. I was really stretched to my breaking point. But then when you finally get out of yourself and you get out of the tree of knowledge and get back into the tree of life, then you're able to breathe and you see God do his thing. But the ministry stuff there, it's been amazing.
And it's been so fun for me because we've got several young kids that have grown up with us at the Dream Center and now are at UAPB, and it's like, we've got a church.
Yeah.
And I like to send you pictures of them when they come back to visit and say, we're going to get them back one day.
Yeah.
But it's so great for them to see that church life that they experience, that life-giving formula here in Little Rock. They go to college, it's there.
Yeah.
And they're so enjoying it and so enjoying you and the community that you're building there. And it was more than just the desire for a church for Pine Bluff for you. It was a desire to see God's hand at work in a community that was once probably one of the wealthier communities in this entire state that has just kind of been on the downward slope for many years. So what is it that just you look at and just inspires you about Pine Bluff?
Well, I love to read. I read a lot. I love history. And when you read the story of Pine Bluff, you kind of get a better sense of what's happening, not just in Pine Bluff, but in the Delta. Pine Bluff started in 1837. And at that time, it was 75% black. They didn't count them, but 3/4 of the population were African-American, former slaves and slaves. And so they get started, and then by the time the Civil War rolls around, Pine Bluff becomes a Union city. It was not a Confederate city. It was a Union city. The Union Army controlled Pine Bluff. It was on the Arkansas River. The Battle of Pine Bluff was Union forces along with 300 slaves that defended the city against the Confederates coming down from Little Rock. So Pine Bluff was a city of freedom. And because it was a city of freedom, you had runaway slaves and freed slaves that would come to Pine Bluff. They could own property. They could own their own business. They started their own university. They had great schools. In fact, so you had so much freedom that by the time the late 1800s, early 1900s rolled around, you have more black millionaires in Pine Bluff than just about anywhere in the country, maybe with the exception of Atlanta and New Orleans. So it was a mecca for African Americans and runaway slaves and freed slaves to come. It was literally a city of freedom. And then late 1800s, early 1900s, around there, they hanged 25 black people right outside the city, and the oppression begins. And from that point until today, a lot of people refer to those 1950s, 60s, 70s. Those are the glory days of Pine Bluff. I look at it as a facade. I think that's not what Pine Bluff is intended to be. And I think there's been a lot of divine judgment since then where God's saying, I want my city back. I want my church back. I want my community back. I really truly believe Pine Bluff was created and intended to be a city of freedom. Not necessarily economic freedom, but also spiritual freedom, because Pine Bluff is the capital of the Delta. And this region, the 2/3 or at least 1/3 of Arkansas has to go through Pine Bluff to get to Little Rock, to get to Northwest Arkansas. Pine Bluff has always been the place where the farmers and the people that were working down in those fields would come to do their shopping, to do their socializing, to do their banking, it was Pine Bluff. It was that city of freedom. And I think this community has been held in bondage, spiritual oppression for so long. The enemy has come in and just twisted everything around that. And I don't want to get too deep politically and so many other things, but I think this community has been targeted for control. 200 years ago, the power source gained their power by making you work and not giving you money. Well, now they give you money not to work. It's still slavery. We just repackaged it. Mm-hmm. And so you have generations of people growing up under this system where the mindset has changed from one of freedom to one of poverty. And when I drive down there, I see this spiritual poverty is not an economic, political condition. It's a spiritual condition. So you go down there and you see these beautiful people that God had created that are held in bondage to this world system. You're being robbed of the freedom that God intended for them to live, because it was for freedom that Christ set you free. And yet the entire world system is engineered to drive them to the bottom, to drive them to control, so they can keep voting for me and so I can keep them in this condition. Well, the job of the church is to break through those strongholds and to bring freedom to people through the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is what I see our mission down there. And it may not seem like a church mission to a lot of people, but we want to get people back to work. We want to start jobs. We want to get people out of this bondage into this freedom and break this cycle of dependency, the cycle of poverty, and get them to move from poverty to self-sufficiency so that they can enjoy this freedom. They can go from a people who with a handout to where they're able to give a handout, and that to me is a uniquely spiritual thing that the community can pass all sorts of tax increases and all sorts of programs, but they've poured billions of dollars into the Delta and the problem's gotten worse. Mm-hmm. The job of the church is to get in there and to rebuild the family and to rebuild hope. And we look at Pine Bluff, the two major problems in this community are the dissolution of the family and the lack of hope. So that's what we're trying to restore. And that to me is not a government thing, it's a church thing.
And with that, you've started another ministry on the side, one of your
my
professional gigs in your free time. You've always got something going. Home Again.
Yeah.
And so just tell us a little bit about what is Home Again.
Well, if there are two big problems are the dissolution of the family and the lack of hope, how are we going to address that? And because of those two issues, it affects everything else that's going on, and the crime, the lack of education, the lack of work ethic, all these things. This is where if you don't have a mom and a dad in a house teaching you the values, that this is the system God set up. Mother, father, children. I'm going to teach you how to be a grown-up. I'm going to teach you how to be a man. Mm-hmm. That has systematically, purposefully been destroyed. Okay, so we as a church have to go back and try to rebuild that family, to teach these biblical principles to get the family back together. And then there's also this lack of hope where I've got no future. So if I have no future, why do I need to learn? Why do I need to go to school? Why do I need to clean my community? Why do I need to have a job? Because I'm going to the grave or I'm going to prison, one or the other. So, and because of this cycle that's been created there, you have hundreds of homes throughout Pine Bluff that are just dilapidated, run down, good for nothing. And so we kind of struck on this idea, which I think was divine. I'm not very smart, so it had to be a God thing. That what we want to do is we want to go into these communities and get these abandoned, run-down homes and begin to rebuild them, tear them down to the studs, and then rebuild them with everything new. We don't want to get borrowed stuff. We want to put everything new in these houses. But not just one house. We want to do like 5, 6, 7, 8 houses on one street. So we create this community. And then once we rebuild this house, what we'll do is we'll rent them to families who are trying to make the transition from poverty to self-sufficiency. So if you keep a job for 3 to 6 months, if you take all these spiritual classes like freedom ministry and financial peace and parenting, a lot of the stuff that we should have learned from the home that we didn't, we're going to try to reteach that. You go through these classes, we'll rent this house to you for 3 to 5 years at a below market rate. And say your rent is $500. Well, $450 of that will go into the rent. $50 goes into your personal savings account. So we're teaching you to be responsible with your money. And then after 3 to 5 years, if you're meeting these markers, we will then sell you that house for either $25,000 or half of the appraised value. So to give people hope to move from, because it's scary to leave a secure paycheck and to get a job and to make this transition. But we have a church that's going to support you to do this. In 3 to 5 years, you can go from poverty to having $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in equity in a home. Plus, you've got a savings account. But then we offer incentives as a ministry where if your kids make the honor roll, we'll put money in your savings account. If you get involved in the community in some way, we'll put money in your savings account. If you get a promotion at work, we give you that incentive. So it's not a race to the bottom. It's incentive to rise to the top. And then again, we surround you not just with one house in a bad neighborhood, but we got 6 or 7 houses. Now you have community, you have life group, you have relationship. You've just changed the culture. Mm-hmm. And then you duplicate this on another street, and then you encourage other churches, other people to do this. And once they see this street get revived, then they want somebody else could repair this house and that house. And there's an old proverb that says the seeds of good deeds produces a tree of life. And it's just when you see this happening, it's going to inspire and encourage and motivate people to get on board with this. And all of a sudden you have this tree of life springing up. It's the opposite of the broken window theory, where if you see a broken window in a building and you don't fix that broken window, somebody's going to break the next one. And then they're going to break into the building. Or if you see trash on the ground, if you don't pick it up, more trash is going to go on the ground. Then next thing you know, you got sofas and apartment, all the stuff right on the side of the road. So it's just the opposite of that. It's a way where we can try to rebuild families, but also rebuild hope. And so we tore the first house up the end of March, early April, and we ought to have this one finished by the summer. And our goal is 3 houses this year and maybe 5 or 6 next year, and see where it goes.
And I think that's really kind of an important thing. It doesn't. A lot of people look at this and they say, "Oh, we got to go in there. We've got to rebuild the entire city." No, it starts with that first home, and then that second, and that first family, then that second, because it's so much time has been spent to get into the position so many people are in, and we always think, "Oh, a quick fix." And that's what I love about this, because home ownership is the fastest way to wealth for so many people. And if anyone's honest with themselves, the vast majority of their assets are in a home. And those who live in poverty, we've kind of stripped them of that opportunity. And I mean, there's just something about, I own this.
Well, it's a change in the mindset from renting to owning, but there's a deeper problem there too. If I need a loan to start a business, I can get a loan, but a lot of these poor folks they can't get a loan, and a lot of these people growing up in the system, they're not a good credit risk,
right?
And so there's a bank in town, FNB Bank, who used to be Fordyce Bank and Trust, FBT, not Fordyce Bank and Trust. What are the letters? They're going to help us in this process of getting these. That's why with the savings account thing is so important. If I can rent a home for 3 to 5 years, then according to this bank, that's a good credit risk. They've done, and we have to make these things available. The world system won't provide that. Right. But if we can get the church to be more of an economic engine rather than strictly a Bible engine, we can provide the things that these communities need. I'll give you another good example. On this one street that we're targeting next, about halfway down the street, there's no fire station. It's boarded up. They don't use it anymore. Our goal is, if we put, we think we can get 6 to 8 families at the end of the street. Well, right down the road, we want to get these families to buy that fire station. We'll help them purchase this building. City may give, we don't know. The city's going to help us out. But then this community owns that building. And they can put the community center there. They can put the thrift store there. They can put the convenience store there. But they own it, and they man it, and they reap the benefits from it. That's part of my community now. If the city builds something, it's going to be great for a year or two, but then there'll be gang signs on it, and But if I own it, you ain't gonna mess with my building.
Exactly.
This is my community. I own my community again, and it's just like you see this Little Italy, Chinatown. You see communities coming together as a community to own their community again, and it transforms the culture. And why can't the church help that out?
Well, and I think it's the New Testament. I mean, you look at the book of Acts. The early Christians came together. They shared their resources. They built a community. Yeah. And when someone didn't have a home, hey, come live with me. Or someone didn't have food to eat, come eat at my table. And I think about when I grew up, there was that sense of community. We roamed our neighborhood. All of us boys in our neighborhood, we rode our bikes. I mean, we were like our own little street gang on our little BMX bikes.
You have the cards and the spokes.
Exactly. Yes, I mean, we were rolling. But I mean, we could do that.
Yeah.
And anymore, you can't do that in a neighborhood. Yeah. Because you don't own it. So a gang might own this area, or this is so run down over here. Mom's like, hey, let's not go over there. Or these things have come in and infiltrated the community and taken away that feeling of this extended family.
But the thing I love about Pine Bluff is I don't get that sense as much as I have in other locations. I think Pine Bluff has a lot of community to it. I think it gets a bad rap, number one. I mean, people think it's just this, this really dangerous place to grow up in, and there are some problems there. But it's a really good community, and we see kids riding bikes all through the neighborhood. We see this, but you're right. But until I own it, it's not going to thrive. So we're trying to marry those two things.
Well, and you're also not giving the house away.
We don't give anything away.
Yeah.
Because you do that, you feed the beast. But we can't. But we got to help you. And so that's what this program is designed to do, is help you make that transition from poverty to self-sufficiency. We got to make things available for you to get into it in the first place. So we're building it cheap or inexpensively, but it's not going to be a cheap home. So we have to help you, but you're the one that you're going to have to do these classes. You're going to have to get these jobs. You're going to have, and it's hard to do, which is why community is so important. Community is our secret weapon. Relationships and community. And if the community can get behind you and inspire and encourage and motivate you, if this family over here is struggling with this family over here, they can meet together, they can encourage each other and stick with it, because you could have equity in a short time. And even if you don't pay your rent, if you break some of the rules, you're out. But we have to give you an avenue back in. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be some structure, but there also has to be some grace. But again, that's where the self-esteem comes from. Work is so important because it teaches a selflessness. It's not about me, it's about my community. That's one of the beautiful things about work that has been robbed from this culture.
And there's a lot of opportunities to jump in and work on this project and to help get this rolling. What's the best way someone can kind of get in touch with you guys, to whether they want to volunteer or donate materials or donate funds for the projects?
Well, we got a website, homeagainpinebluff.org. We got a Facebook page, Home Again Pine Bluff, or just contact New Life Church. This program is sort of two sides to it. The building of the house is Home Again Pine Bluff. That's our 501c3. That's part of our Beautiful Feet ministry we started back in early 2000. The ministry side is through New Life Church. You do not have to be a member of New Life Church to be a part of this program, but you will have to come and take these classes that we offer. So anybody can be a part of this, but the spiritual side is going to be run through the church. The building side is run through our 501c3. So the best thing we want to pay all of our contractors to do their work. So we're paying the electrician, we're paying the roofer, we're paying the heat and air guys. It's the materials that we need some help with to make this program feasible. So we're trying to get as many donations as we can to make that happen. But we also want these guys that are doing that work to work. We're trying to work with the local high school to get some of these students out of the high school to work alongside these professionals to learn these trades, and they can earn school credit. It's like there's a construction arts class at Pine Bluff High School. We used to call it shop. My shop teacher, Crane Bieberstein, he had like 3 fingers. We're going to make a chessboard today. Well, you ain't teaching me. But now they call it construction arts. And so that if they can learn this trade and they say, hey, I like this electricity thing, I like this plumbing thing, we want to make the avenue available to them through the local community colleges from other places, not only to earn school credit, but also credit toward their apprenticeship. So homeagainpinebluff.org or Home Again Pine Bluff on Facebook's best way to get in touch with us, or through New Life Church.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for being on the other side of the questions today. And trust me, you did not embarrass.
A little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. You're good, though. Thank you so much, Matt, for all you're doing and just chasing your God-given dream.
Well, you bet. I'm thrilled to be here with you because you're one of my heroes, man. I just love you. Love what you're doing. I want to be Drew Davis when I grow up.
Well, you need to go to a better college than Alabama. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to watch this podcast. I hope you enjoyed Matt's story. It's all about the journey, not the destination. You don't have to have all the pieces and everything together before you get started. Get out there, chase your God-given dream, and make a difference in this world.